What's up? It's Revz. Today I wanted to talk about one of the most annoying features in modern racing games, and that is changing weather. What you're seeing in the background is a career invitational race from Project Cars 1. It's the second race of the Pagani Zonda R Cup, which includes a 4-lap race here at the 24 Hours Le Mans circuit. As you can see from the top right corner, the game is expecting it to be a dry race, with a forecast calling for basically no change in weather. This is a lie, as it so often is in Project Cars 1. For whatever reason, Project Cars 1 is extremely bad about changing the weather for the last couple of laps of a race, which is extremely annoying, especially on these extremely long tracks like the 24 Hours Le Mans circuit or the Nürburgring. The problem is Project Cars uses a slot-based weather system. So for every race there's 4 possible slots, and the weather will transition seamlessly between each one of those slots. So what has clearly happened in this race in particular, 4 slots have been selected for a 4-lap race. The first 2 are a very pretty day with medium clouds, and the next 2, as you will soon see, are piss pouring with rain. As a player, I cannot see further ahead in the forecast than 1 slot, and this is a problem that has maintained itself both in Project Cars 2 and in Automobilista 2, which uses the same engine. Things are further compounded with other additional issues. For example, Automobilista 2 has done a lot of testing and tuning and tweaking of the AI to make sure that when you have AI on slick tires on a wet track, they are given an appropriate time penalty of their lap times. It is just as hard, theoretically, for the AI to drive the car around the track as you. But in the earlier Project Cars games, especially Project Cars 1, that is not the case. The AI is nowhere near as affected as the player, as you will soon see. I've fast forwarded now to the second lap of the race. After starting in 18th, we've now fought our way up to 7th, using slipstreaming techniques to pass other cars. I don't know if you'll be able to see the effect because of YouTube bitrate, but outside of the windshield, I can just barely make out that it's starting to rain. And soon you will start to see the rain starting to collect on my windshield as I turn on the windshield wiper. This is the signal universally in Project Cars that it is time to start thinking about pitting. As you can see, I almost lose control here, likely because of how slippery it's starting to become on the track, and as soon as you start seeing rooster tails, you know you're not going to have any grip at all on slicks. And that's fairly realistic. That is kind of the moment of judgment real race car drivers use, on the track at least, when they need to pit. Now I'm in a bit of a conundrum, however, because my mind is now split. As a racing driver, I know I need to come in for rain tires. It is about to downpour. It's a very long track, very high speeds, hydroplaning is very likely. It makes sense that with 2 laps to go around the 24 Hours Le Mans circuit that you would pit for tires at this point, especially in what is only a 4-lap race. However, as a game player, it's very clear that the AI is not programmed to do that. As you'll see in just a moment, as I fast forward again, the AI does not pit. They all stay out on the slick tires. Or, I guess you could also make the assumption that all of these cars started the race on wet tires, but then we have the problem of, well, I can only see the weather forecast 1 slot ahead. So now, if that's the case, I have to assume that the AI can see the entirety of the weather slots, which means they have an unfair advantage over me. Either way, it doesn't make much sense. Worse, even through a downpour, as you'll see on the final lap of this race, the AI is still putting up relatively competitive times. They're running 200 miles an hour on slick tires through the middle of a rainstorm. It's just, in real life, it would be suicidal. Also, small side note, if anybody happens to know why my sound and video constantly get desynced on a longer recording, especially after 20 minutes with AMD recording software, please let me know, because it is really freaking annoying. So anyway, minor sound desync issues aside, this is something that happens a lot in Project Cars 1, and it is extremely annoying to go through a race, to storm through the field, to do extremely well, and then on the very last lap of a really long race, a really long track at like the Nürburgring or here at Le Mans, it just suddenly starts to rain, and you can't hold a candle to what the AI can do performance-wise, because you can see in the footage you're seeing now, even on wet tires, I'm barely able to keep this car under control. This has been something that's pervasive in pretty much every driving game with changeable wet weather driving, or I guess dynamic wet weather driving. There is always seemingly an imbalance between the AI and the player and what the two parties can do. And this has to do, I understand, with the AI cars using a simplified version of the physics and the tire models because our computers just can't handle it. That especially makes sense for Project Cars 1 and 2 because, you know, these games had to run on the Xbox One, which was horrendously underpowered. But it doesn't stop it from being extremely frustrating. And from the point of view of the normal player, I guess, especially with these career races, which are relatively short unless you go into the endurance categories, it doesn't really add that much to the video game playing experience. If anything, it makes it extremely frustrating because you put this time investment to run up, give or take 20-minute race, only to have all of it stolen away from you on the last lap or the last 2 laps because you can't predict the weather. You're not a psychic. And that's really annoying. I would be very curious to see what you have to say, because on one hand, this is extremely realistic. This is something that real race car drivers do have to deal with. But real race car drivers also on a much more even playing field, and the technical limitations that we have in sim racing, I don't know if it is possible yet. It might be in the future. I don't know if it's possible yet to get the AI to behave not exactly like a human would, but close enough to be reasonable, I suppose. The way old games did it is that when you would load into the race, you would just have, like, every single car would have a set strategy depending on the length of the race and what was expected of them, right? And so you could manually program, okay, this car is gonna have some sort of engine trouble and have to come into the pits early, but then they're going to go like hell for the rest of the race and be set. Some cars are going to go long, some cars are going to go short. And that's how they created this, like, dynamic feeling for the player. But today, modern racing games and modern dev teams, are trying to do that completely dynamically. And I don't know if that's possible. There's so many variables in a modern racing sim. There are so many things that have to work together that I don't know if it's possible to have a completely dynamic system work flawlessly like that. Think about Grand Prix 4. Every time you load into that game, you generate a seed that the game uses that predetermines every single thing that is going to happen on the track except for you. Okay? Whatever you do, you are the only variable that the other cars have to navigate around. What modern game devs are trying to do is the opposite of that, where literally absolutely everything, including the player, is a variable. And the systems just have to work together themselves to figure out a solution. And the result is you get weird things like this. So when the weather changes rapidly, you get cars that don't pit. When the race is coming to an end and there's only 1 lap to go and it's completely dry, and everyone should be able to make it on fuel, you have half the fuel pulling in because they didn't put enough gas in the car randomly and didn't feel the need to pit until the very last lap. It's just a whole bunch of weird things like this. It's just weird AI behavior. And I'm interested to see what the future of video gaming holds in this regard. I'm very interested to see how developers of the future tackle this problem. Realistically speaking, the answer to that question is going to be testing. The development times on these games is already incredibly long as it is. The graphical fidelity that people expect from their hardware and their consoles now, it's insane what people and artists are able to get out of computers these days. Project Cars is it is a decade old now. It still looks beautiful. It still looks jaw-dropping. It's amazing. But when it comes to testing AI systems, especially in a racing game, a single-player racing game, where that is so important, and where developers and game makers are so far behind the 8 ball and have been for so long, it's just going to take lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of testing. And maybe you'll be able to do that with AI algorithms. Otherwise, you're just going to have to get a really big beta group of people and just have them just drive the hell out of your game and put the stupidest car combinations on the stupidest tracks, make them drive everything in every weather, just do as much just stuff as possible to find as many problems as possible to ship the game in the best possible light. But I doubt any corporation is going to, hire a few thousand quality assurance testers to make sure that, games like this, they're not profitable enough for that level of dedication. Hell, Project Cars 2, they outsourced quality assurance on the project, or on the Xbox One version of the game, and it didn't run. It wasn't functional. So, yeah, that's an ongoing issue with the industry. Now, to wrap this up, I guess there is another way, theoretically, of doing this, and that is to close the scope of your game. If you look at pretty much every racing sim that is available right now, it is a buffet of content. You've got a huge, a cluster of cars, a cluster of tracks. It's a massive, massive list of content, that's very easy to put on the back of the box. But every single one of those car, track, weather, class mixture, every single one of those combinations is another variable and another thing that they're going to have to test. And that is the problem that Automobilista 2 is running into, because with every single patch, that game keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. There are more cars, there are more classes, there are more tracks. So every single time we have to do a quality of life improvement, that game it's taking longer and longer and longer. It's taking months and months and months and months to do the testing necessary to make the game better. So games like Le Mans Ultimate, for an example. Le Mans Ultimate has a very narrow scope of what it's simulating. It is the WEC simulator. So it only has 2 or 3 car classes, or I guess technically 4 car classes, and 20 tracks with a handful of different variations. That's relatively easy. I mean, long term, it's a relatively easy thing to balance versus 150 tracks and 500 cars. Just pulling numbers out of my butt there. Another example, Project Motor Racing. Project Motor Racing is very, very much narrowing its scope. It's only got 27 track layouts. That's not much. We're talking about 13 to maybe 19 locations. So, and 10 car classes with about 70 cars in total, I should mention. So that's not that game. I am hoping and praying the AI in that game stands head and shoulders above everything else on the market right now. Again, just to be clear here, not talking so much about on-track behavior, but I'm talking about things like pit strategy, like recovering from accidents, like cars being appropriately, slow when they get damaged, about cars choosing correctly when to pit for tires. The actual on-track action between just about every game on the market right now is actually pretty good. It's just all the other stuff that goes with simulating a car race, the yellow flag rules, the pit stops, all of those things that just aren't there yet. And they haven't been for a decade. They've just been ignored on behalf of online gaming. And that needs to stop. And I hope that's what we're seeing now. I hope that's the market shifting away from esports, away from online gaming, and back to the single-player realm. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to me rant for a few minutes. It was very cathartic, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you maybe learned something as well. If you'd like to keep up with what I'm doing, you can follow me at Revz_Road Racer on X. After many trials and tribulations, we are finally getting close to the release of the third and final part of the comic for the Adventures of Ruby Starfire Volume 0, Adelaide Adventure. If you haven't seen the first two parts, please go take a look. I'd massively appreciate it. And here's a quick little sneak peek for Part 3.